All right, this video is the week 1 exercise basics for the fall prevention class of October 2019. Today we're going to be looking at the two things that make us fundamentally human, and our ability to move and our ability to breathe. So before we go through these, what I want to do is talk to you about the safety of the class. Stop the exercises, stop the activities. If at any point you experience chest pain, dizziness, blurred vision, excessive sweating, your heart racing, all of those are kind of red flags. So make sure if you're doing this at home, you stop activity. And if it does not get better, seek medical attention or call 911. Nothing we will be doing today should tip us into this. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do 3 different tests looking at how efficiently we breathe. So our breath hold is going to look at our capacity. Our Bolt score is going to look at whether we tip into a stressful or non-stressful environment more easily. And our CO2 tolerance is going to look at our idea of controlling our breath. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your phone, a stopwatch, a watch, or on your computer, and I want you to open up the stopwatch app. For the first part of the breath hold, you're going to take after taking nice easy breaths, we're going to breathe in deeply and then hold our breath. So as soon as we breathe in deeply, start the timer, and at that first desire to breathe, so whether that makes you tap your fingers, tap your toes, you swallow, the first urge to breathe, you're going to hit the stop. And that's your time. And so what I want you to do is I want you to record that time next to the word breath hold. The second test that we're going to do is your Bolt score. So you're going to take, after a couple easy breaths, you're going to take a full inhale. You're going to exhale all of the air out. And then you're going to hold. So what that's going to look like, we're going to take a deep breath in. Again, going to that first desire to breathe. Stop and inhale. So again, that's a full exhale without any air in your lungs. How long can you hold that state before you need to breathe in again? So that's our Bolt score. Our CO2 tolerance, we're going to take a very big inhale, and then we're going to exhale as long as possible. So what that's going to look like, we're going to inhale. And as soon as we stop exhaling, we're going to stop that timer. So you've got 3 things. Your breath hold, how long can you hold your breath? Bolt score, how long without any air in your lungs does it take until you need a breath again? And then CO2 tolerance, how long can you make that exhale? And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at these scores on how they fall on normative values. So I'm going to move this guy off to the side. What we're going to look at is first that breath hold. So we're going to look, and the green line is the minimum, and the black line is kind of the maximum that we want to see. We want to fall somewhere in between those 2 pillars. So our breath hold, we want it to be about 60 seconds. Our Bolt score, we want to be greater than 30 seconds. And our CO2 tolerance, we want to be greater than 45 seconds. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking, I'm nowhere close. And some of you may be thinking, well, that was really easy. I could have gone longer. The point is to look at your first desire to breathe, because that is what your body defaults to when you're not pushing as hard as you can. So one of the things that we notice is, well, do I breathe in and out of my nose or out of my mouth? What do I do here? What we know is that nasal breathing is optimal. With mouth breathing, we can get bad breath and we snore. But in addition to that, it tips us into the fight or flight response. So we're constantly ready to go. It encourages use of accessory respiratory muscles. So our neck and our shoulders and our chest are working harder to breathe in through our mouth. We also see that mouth breathing can cause a lot of unnecessary fatigue. And that's because these muscles are working harder to get not a great amount of oxygen in. So whether we panic or we're about to fall or we're in a stressful situation, where does your body naturally tip? So with nasal breathing, we can increase the energy. We can filter out allergens and foreign bodies to kind of build our body's immune system to get rid of viruses and bacteria. Breathing in through your nose, because it does require more effort, we also get 10 to 15% more oxygen because it's reaching those lower lobes. We see the blood vessels expanding and the fluids moving more freely, and because of that, our heart is not having to work as hard, so it lowers our heart rate because we're more efficient. We also see that nasal breathing can have an effect on metabolism and increasing the metabolism and the amount of energy that we are burning. So this is ideal for some of the people who are looking at weight loss and different tips for how to complement their exercise and diet that they're already doing. Hyperventilation. So I'm going to take us back really quick until those graphs, and I want you to look at the breath hold and look at your numbers. If we can't make at least 30 seconds of a breath hold, then we are hyperventilating. So that is breathing in excess of metabolic need. Hyperventilation causes decreased cutaneous and peripheral blood flow, so blood flow to our extremities, interferes with peripheral nerve conduction, and it increases our muscle contraction threshold. So those knots and those trigger points in your back, your neck, and your shoulders that just seem to always pop up, and no matter what you do, they can never go away. So being a hyperventilator kind of increases our risk for getting these knots and trigger points. The big thing that I also want to note with hyperventilating is it does slow wound healing. Because you're not getting as much oxygen in, that oxygen can't get into the blood, which then can't send oxygen-rich blood to a bruise or a cut or some kind of wound that's trying to heal. So nasal breathing can actually help improve our wound healing. So we know how to breathe in and out of our nose, but what we want to look at is how do we do that? So what I want you to do is I want you to take one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly, just like in the picture. And for a couple of minutes, I want you to see what you naturally do to breathe. When you breathe normally, do you notice your chest rising? Do you notice your stomach rising? Do you notice a combination of both? I want you to take a couple minutes and let that regulate out and see what you default to. So when we use our chest to breathe, we're using all of the muscles in our neck, our chest, our back to lift up that chest and breathe out. And that can create some unnecessary tension. But when we breathe in and out of our belly, all of this up here is quiet and it's still. And we use our diaphragm, and that decreases the tone in all of the muscles up here. So we get a lot more relaxed. So I'm going to show you what actually happens on the inside of your body as you're breathing. So if you'll notice, the diaphragm, when it contracts, it actually pulls down the lungs, and that's how we inflate and get all that oxygen in there. Pretty cool concept to think about, but if you notice, it is stimulated by that nerve, and we can actually tap into that nerve and our ability to control the diaphragm and how much it expands and contracts and change our breathing on our own. So you could be sitting at home right now and you're wondering, okay, I'm breathing through my nose, I'm using my belly. That's all I need to know, right? Is that enough? But what I want to ask you is, right now, how are you sitting or standing? Are you practicing these breathing exercises slouched back? Are you tilted forward with your hands on your knees or your elbows on your knees? How are you sitting in the chair? And how we're sitting tells us what muscles are being used and how have we stacked our body. So I have a question on here on what the core is. Now, most people will say the core is from our trunk, right? From the shoulders all the way down to the hips. But what I'm asking is, what is kind of the core of our respiratory system? So we're going to look at 4 different parts. I want you to kind of think about it as a can of soda. So the sides are your abdominals and your multifidi, teeny tiny muscles in your back. The top is our diaphragm, and the bottom is our pelvic floor muscles. So what I want you to think about is, if you're slouched or leaning forward, does it look like you can put a can of Coke in your center? And what happens is, when we lean forward and we have our hips rotated anteriorly, or if we lean back where our hips are kind of tucked under us, what happens is we open that can of Coke. If you've ever tried to crush a pressurized can, you know you can't do it. You can make little dents in it, but you can't fully crush it. As soon as you pop that top off, so if we pop off the diaphragm because we're not using it right, we can crush that core, and our core will fail under load. So the really important part about it is, yes, we're using our diaphragm and we're breathing through our nose now, but all of that doesn't matter unless everything is stacked up evenly underneath it. So try to figure out how you're sitting right now without making the adjustment already. Do you normally default to kind of sitting slouched, sitting with your hips back, or sitting neutral? To do this, you can take your hands, and I want you to place them on top of your hips right here. Notice, if I'm forward, my hands are tipped forward, and if I'm tucking my tail under, my hands are tipped back. Think about a bucket of water and which way it's spilling. So, sitting in your seat with your hands on your hips, feet shoulder width apart on the ground, I want you to a couple times to try to find that neutral. So we're going to rock forward and rock back. And I want you to see if you can find where that happy medium is. It can also help if you take your hands, instead of keeping them flat, now use a pinch grip and actually use your thumbs and your finger to rock you back and forth. You'll find with neutral, you're going to feel pressure right underneath the bones of your bottom. Those are called your sit bones, or your ischial tuberosities, and they're going to sit directly on the chair. This is the point where you'll feel tallest in that rock, as opposed to shorter here and shorter here. So it's going to make you be the tallest. As you're rocking, instead of putting our hands on our hips, let's put our hands on our legs now. Do the same thing. We're going to rock forward and backward from anterior to posterior, tipping that water in and out. What you should feel under your hands is, you should feel your leg muscles contracting. If you try to do it and without your leg muscles contracting, you won't be able to do it. So this brings us to our second important movement, which is pushing down into the ground. So in your chair, wherever you are right now, I want you to try to stand up without pushing anything into the ground. Whether that's your hands, your feet, I want you to try to stand up without pushing down. what you'll notice is it is impossible. We either have to push down with our hands, we have to push down with our feet, we have to lean forward and push through the front of our legs. Part of the ability to get up is to push down, to push the earth away from us. So we've stacked the bricks. We know we have to push down, and we know we have to have a tight core. So in your chair, what I want you to do is keeping that neutral pelvis, keeping those feet directly underneath you, just like in this picture where we're 90-90. The feet are under the chair and they're not lounging out in front of us. And I want you to take your chin, and if you notice your head's tilted back, I want you to tuck that chin in. We're going to go back and forth. What you should feel is you should feel these muscles contracting and the muscles on the back of your head relaxing, stretching out. The next one we're going to do after doing each exercise for about 90 seconds is we're going to do scap squeezes. So that bottom right picture, I want you to take your shoulder blades and I want you to pull them down and in towards your tailbone or to your lower back. So what it's going to look like is it's going to look like you're opening up your chest, staying nice and tall with that chin retracted, and relax. We're going to really work on opening that chest and fixing that posture. The last exercise we have, we're going to work on our shoulders and our arms. Keeping everything upright. I want you to take your hands, press them together in the front, open them out to the side, lift them up towards the sky, back out in front, back to the front, and relax. We're going to go through this motion of pressing our hands together, pressing our arms out, and reaching up to the side, and back in. We're going to, again, repeat those for 90 seconds on your own pace. I don't want to see people flying through these motions. I want to see it's nice and controlled, where we're breathing in and out of our nose. With any of these exercises, if you have shoulder pain, you have pain in your neck, we are going to work up to the pain and back off. We should never be working through the pain. This is where we're going to bring everything together. So we know we need to have our shoulders back, our chin tucked, and our extremities ready to move. So we're going to do some marching, but we're not going to do marching like you would normally see. We're going to keep that core nice and pressurized, sitting up nice and tall. And I want you to press both of your feet into the ground at 60%. So what would happen is if there were spiders under your feet and you don't want them to move, if I were to come over and try to lift your foot off the ground, I shouldn't be able to because you're pushing your feet into the ground. So 60%. As one leg maintains 60%, you're going to lift the other leg up. Then you're going to push this leg down 60% to lift the left up. And so instead of just picking up our legs and putting them down, now we are intentionally pushing down into the ground, engaging our core, engaging our legs to create some really good change. 30 seconds, goes to 60, goes to 90, and then we're going to relax. After you feel like you've got your breath back, which you should have never lost in the first place because we're breathing in through our nose, going slowly at our own pace. The next exercise, same thing with our feet shoulder width apart, pressing down in 60%. You're going to kick your foot out and back. Pushing this foot down while this foot's kicking. Pushing this one down while the right foot's kicking. Back and forth, trying not to lose the core, staying up nice and tall. For those of you who have knee pain when doing this, it's okay to not hit that full straight. You can go as far as you can and then back off. We're never going past the point of pain. Our third exercise is ankle bumps. So ideally, I would like the foot straight out, pushing down the gas pedal and pulling it back. But for those of you who are not able to hold it straight while we do it, and push down and back, we're going to put both feet on the ground. We're going to push through our toes to lift our heels off the ground. Then we're going to push our heels into the ground to lift our toes up. Then we're going to rock back and forth on those ankles nice and slow. What you should feel after about 90 seconds is that muscles on the back of the leg starting to loosen up. You shouldn't feel as much of a stretch. Tying the breath with the movement, create one big stable unit. The last one we're going to do is we're going to work on our hip mobility. So we're going to take a paper plate, sit at the very edge of our chair, and with one foot on the plate and the other foot stabilizing us, putting 60% down, you're going to slide that hip out and back in. Out and back in, keeping everything upright. What you should feel is you should feel the muscles on the outside of your hip contracting. I don't want to see where the knee stays the same and the foot's just moving. You should pretend like you have a board on both sides of your leg and the whole thing is moving at once. The knees are staying with the toes. Now notice, this knee should not move at all. As I move out with this one, we shouldn't see this one dip in. It should stay strong, pushing into the ground. So as this foot's rooted, the right hip is moving. Switch feet. Same thing, pushing the one foot down, opening up the hip, and coming back. Opening up the hip, and coming back. The last one we're going to do is reaching. Now, please take caution with this one. If you have arm rails and you feel more comfortable with those, work within those arm rails. If you don't and feel you are okay, then you may continue. So, what we're going to do, with our feet shoulder width apart, I want you to take your hands and place one on top of the other. You're going to let those hands fall down to the ground. What I want you to do is I want you to take those fingertips and I want you to just to drop them in a straight line to the ground and back up. So the upper body is relaxed and we are just bending at the waist, touching the fingertips and coming back up. If you have low back pain with this, all you have to do is go a little bit slower and then come back up. So we're not necessarily going to go down as far. Again, those feet are pushing into the ground. I don't see my knees out or collapsing in. You see them straight facing. Touching your hands down and coming back up. trying to keep that head neutral. Our second one, our feet are going to stay the same. I'm going to take one hand out, and I want you to push both feet into the ground as you reach out. The minute you start to feel the opposite leg start to come off the ground, come back to the center. We're going to reach with the right, pushing both feet down and back to the center. Push feet down, reach out. Come back to the center with good posture. Out. So again, we're only doing this for about 90 seconds at your own pace. Good. So we've got reaching down and reaching out to the sides. Our sit to stand. So for those of you having difficulty, hopefully by teaching you to create a stable core, we will have given you some more tools and some more cues to notice how to get out of the chair a little bit better. So what I want to see is, instead of trying to sit up from the chair from way back here, I want you to scoot your feet forward and then come forward. So your feet should be shoulder width apart. You can either use the handrails to set up, or you can use your legs. But what we're going to do is we're going to lean forward. We're going to put our nose over our toes. We're going to push up and come to a full stand where we're a straight line all the way up. We don't want to come up to a stand that's here where we're not fully straight, or a stand where we're too far forward. We want to go straight up to the ceiling. We're going to put our knees on the back of the chair to make sure it's there. We're going to reverse it. So we're going to lean back and reach for the arm rails and lower ourselves down. We don't want to plop. So again, we're going to scoot to the front of our chair. Lean forward. Push up all the way. We're going to hold until we get our balance. Then we're going to move our legs back. Push the hips back and feel through the chair. And sit down. Last one, for those of you who do not have arm rails, you're going to scoot forward in your chair. You can either put your hands on your legs to brace or your hands on the chair. We're going to lean forward and push down with our legs into the ground. Full standing up, straight line. Move backwards till your legs touch the chair. Hips back, hands back. Find the edge of the seat and sit down nice and slow. This is about control, not how many you can do. So for homework, what I want you to do is, whether you do the exercises or not is your choice, but I would really like it. With this email and this link, there should be a link to this worksheet. And what it is your box breathing. So I want you to take the scores that we took earlier at the top. You're going to write your breath hold in it, your Bolt score, and your CO2 tolerance. Now what this worksheet says is we're going to practice belly breathing going up and down a ladder. And what that means is we're going to do it at a ratio. So you'll see on the screen there's a 1, 1, 1, 1. So we're going to inhale for a second, hold for a second, exhale for a second, hold for a second. Then we're going to do twos. So breathe in for 2, hold for 2, exhale for 2, pause for 2. Then we'll do 3. So inhale for 3, hold for 3, exhale for 3, pause for 3. And then we'll go up to 4s, 5s, 6. You're going to go as high as you can up the ladder. But say I get to 7s and inhaling for 7, holding for 7, but I can't exhale for 7. I'm going to take a minute, and then I'm going to do 6 again, and then go back down the ladder and do 5s, 4, 3, 2, 1. That is one set, And that's all you do. You go up the ladder once and down the ladder once. Now what I would like you to do is I would like you to do it 3 times a day. And each time, so this is Friday, this is our box number 1. So this morning I got to 5. In the afternoon I'm going to do it again, and maybe I get to 5 again. And then maybe in the evening I get to 6. But then Saturday morning maybe I'm not feeling as great and I only get to 4. That's okay. This is just a training tool. This isn't something I want you doing all hours of the day. It's something that when we think about it and we have a minute, let's take 3 minutes and let's go through this ladder and see how far we can get and record what level we get to. We're going to do it every day, 3 times a day, starting on Friday, doing Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and on Friday we will retest. So we will look at how long you can hold your breath again. We will look at your ability to exhale and hold, and then we will look at your ability to breathe out as long as possible. And we want to see if we were able to make any improvements. So if you have questions, please let me know. This is my first time making one of these, so if you can't hear me or you can't see me, let me know and I will take another video and I will send that to you. Again, breathing and pushing down are 2 of the most fundamentally important things we can do as we walk about. We really can't move without either of them. So practice this breathing technique and we will see you next week.